Hi everybody, welcome to this week's webinar. Thanks for joining us. Our theme for today is called Hardcore Breathing. So today we're going to be talking about the muscles involved in breathing, so the mechanics of breathing, the anatomy of the breathing muscles. We're going to be talking about the importance of deep breathing. We will be talking about the difference between nasal and mouth breathing and the benefits of each and when it's appropriate to use each technique. And then we'll go on to talk about some self-care of the breathing muscles. So some stretches to open up the thoracic cavity and also some self-massage to treat the muscles that are directly involved in breathing. Okay, so we are recording this session. So if you would prefer to keep your camera off, that's fine, please do so. But if you're comfortable, we would love for you to turn on your mic and join the conversation. And then you can also feel free to use the chat box if you have any questions throughout the session. All right, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We're going to be starting off with the anatomy of the breathing muscles. All right. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right. Okay. All right, so here we have our first article from the self-care series for this week. It's called The Mechanics of Breathing. And we just go through to talk about the primary and secondary respiratory muscles. So Martin, would you like to take it away?
Yes, I would. So everything we discussed in the past, like 10 weeks or so, revolved around certain muscle groups, what they do, their actions, how to check if they're balanced, imbalanced, whatever. And all that kind of circles back around to arguably the most important muscle group, and that's the muscles of breathing, so your respiratory muscles. So the lungs are the primary organ that helps with oxygen transfer. But if your breathing is restricted due to tight muscles and you're not utilizing full lung capacity, the rest of the muscles in your body are missing. They're missing out on oxygen transfer, and that can lead to a number of different issues. But on a physical performance level, what that means is fatigue will set in quicker if your muscles are lacking oxygen. The anatomy, it's broken down into two parts, a primary group and a secondary group. And just as when we discussed other muscle groups in the body having a synergist muscle that assists in its movement to the primary muscle, it's fatigue. The same thing goes for the breathing muscles. So if the primary muscle groups of the respiratory system get fatigued, these smaller ones will jump in to help with any action. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the diaphragm. So this is the main guy. This is the captain of the ship. This is probably one of the coolest muscles in the human body, at least in my opinion, and probably one of the most unique ones. So if you picture an inflated balloon just tucked in behind your rib cage that deflates and inflates as you breathe in and out. So when you inhale, you take a deep breath in, that balloon deflates and it moves down your torso. And that's what makes rooms for the lungs to expand, right? And then on the exhale, on the expiration, the diaphragm relaxes, the lungs shrink, and then air is removed. And that whole process starts all over again. So when there's more volume in that thoracic cavity, when you inhale, that means there's more pressure in the abdomen. So all those organs and all that, all your abdominals, all that pressure pushes the belly outward. And this is what's referred to as belly breathing. So a good example that I thought of that illustrates this is that if you were to ever watch professional cyclists, like in the Tour de France, you have these real skinny guys, not an ounce of fat on them, when they're going up a hill and they're bent over on their bikes, it almost looks like, if you pay attention, it almost looks like they have like a beer gut pretty much. And that's because they're sucking in so much of that oxygen that they need to take full belly breaths, because at that level, especially if you're factoring in altitude, and if you're only taking shallow breaths and not utilizing as much oxygen as possible, you're gonna drop pretty quickly. But yeah, so that's the diaphragm. As far as like where it attaches, like I said, it's kind of like this little dome shaped. Think of like a parachute, half of a balloon, along the inside of the rib cage. It attaches on the bottom vertebrae, on the lumbar vertebrae, and then the final, the bottom 6 ribs on the side. And then anteriorly speaking, it attaches on that little knob on your sternum right before your abdomen, called your xiphoid process. So it takes up a lot of space, but it's a really thin, cool looking jellyfish type muscle. But yeah, so, and then the second primary muscle group that we have are your intercostal muscles. So these are the muscles in between your ribs, right? So something to think about when you're having a cookout this weekend, when you're having ribs. So there's two sets of these. You have your external intercostals and internal intercostals. And pretty much what they're responsible is forced inhalation and forced exhalation. So when you inhale, it pulls the ribs up and expands the chest cavity. And on the exhale, it depresses the ribs and decreases the space in the chest cavity. So that's the responsibility for those guys. And then, like I said before, you do have the secondary muscles. These are the guys that, if for whatever reason the diaphragm and the intercostals are restricted for whatever reason, these guys will help with the breathing. So first one that we have is your SCM. So this is one where if you just turn your neck to one side and you feel that guy jump out on the side, that's easy to palpate on most people. It's a neck flexor. It attaches right behind the ear on the occipital area there, and then onto the sternum, like right by your collarbone there. The second one is called, we talked about in recent webinars, it's your scalenes, your anterior scalenes. These guys attach to the first and second rib. So like when I told you, explained the breathing and how forced inhalation, exhalation moves the ribs up and down, they're important with that. Also another important muscle when it comes to thoracic outlet syndrome and nerve entrapment. And then the other one that we have is, pec minor. So this is deep to the pec major, one of the biggest chest muscle. And again, that attaches to the third, fourth, and fifth rib. So all these muscles attach into the ribs and help with the inhalation, exhalation process. And then, of course, you can't forget the abdominal muscles. So we talked on end about the importance of core strength and the abdominals. And their primary function is to stabilize the trunk. That's what they're meant to do. So there's, the transverse abdominal, which is, the deepest one, and that's your most stabilizing one. And that goes, you have your obliques, the ones on the side. And then your most superficial one, your six-pack muscles, your rectus abdominis, which is mostly just for trunk flexion, the vanity muscle. So it has no other really use other than to flex your trunk forward. So, if the diaphragm and intercostals are doing their job, these smaller ones, they kick into gear. So as being like a massage therapist, not saying, this is the main reason why some clients come in with scaling tightness or SCM tightness or pec minor tightness, but it's definitely not something to rule out as far as because they're not taking full lung capacity breaths, that's not a factor in their condition. So yeah, those are the primary and secondary muscles of respiration that we have to deal with. And needless to say, they're very important, as with all the other muscles we talk about.
All right, wonderful. Okay, and then I guess might be a nice time to move on to the difference between nasal versus mouth breathing.
Yeah. So this is something that many people struggle with, including myself, when it comes to heavy intensity exercise and breathing. So quick story. When I would
Sorry,
for ways to.
Martin, I think you actually just cut out there. It cut out after you said quick story.
Oh, could you hear me? Could you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So quick story. When I was looking around and trying to figure out ways that I can to cross train, I came across swimming. So I mean, I'm able to survive if I put in the pool, but I know, like, as far as a form of cross training to running, it's really good because it takes pressure off the joints. So I went ahead and I started swimming, just basic freestyle swimming, and I sort of I couldn't get more than 4 laps before I'm just gassed, just completely just gone. And so, like, I'd be seeing these people swimming back and forth for like hours on end. And it wasn't until then when I realized that it's because I'm breathing out of my mouth when I'm swimming. And so that's when I looked into the importance of nasal breathing versus mouth breathing. Because you can get away with it when you're on land, right? I guess, but it's a different story when you're swimming. So rule of thumb, right? So the nose was designed for respiratory actions, and the mouth was designed for digestive actions. So when you talk about nasal breathing, you're able to take in more oxygen, right? And the air is being filtered from all these different allergens, and as it's going through the nasal cavity, it's getting warmed up. So it pretty much just says, like, it's a smoother entry of air into the lungs. So when you're able to take in more oxygen, what happens is, on a chemical level, I guess, nitric oxide is being released, right? So nitric oxide is one of the things that's necessary to increase carbon dioxide in the blood. And carbon dioxide is what releases oxygen. So mouth breathing doesn't release this nitric oxide. So pretty much what that means is that the cells aren't getting as much oxygen if you're breathing out of your mouth the whole time. And that's what leads to fatigue, or in my case, drowning, pretty much. This is pretty similar to, like, when you hyperventilate, when you hear people hyperventilate, that's what's going on, is your muscles, you're offloading all this carbon dioxide, making it harder to push oxygen to the cells. So, and then also, nasal breathing also activates the parasympathetic nervous system as well. So it's part of the nervous system that's responsible for, rest and recovery, rest and digest, rather than the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible, for the fight or flight. So yeah, that means, like, even if the body is in a stressful state of high intensity exercise, if you're doing nasal breaths, you can, in a way, kind of provide a sense of calm to allow better function. There's a really good book out there from a guy, his name is Brian McKenzie. It's called The Art of Breath. He's also somebody who did, it's called The Unbreakable Runner. He wrote that too. But anyway, he's a movement coach, and he specializes, like, that's his thing, is that he specializes in optimizing oxygen intake for better athletic performance. So really, really cool resource to check in if you're interested in that kind of stuff.
Wonderful. I did have a question for you. What did you do to overcome almost drowning? What did you do to teach yourself to breathe properly in the pool?
So I realized it was it's quite a simple, subtle change. It was all about head tilt. I had to make sure my head was tilting enough so I can.
So you clear the water.
So I can clear the water, right? But yeah, it's not saying that I'm any better now, but at least I can make it more than three times up and down the pool.
Well, not drowning is definitely a bonus.
Right.
That's kind of essential. I actually, have worked as a swim coach for a long time, and a lot of people, when they start to swim, if they haven't been taught to breathe properly during swimming, I've found a lot of people would actually hold their breath. So they would hold their breath while their face is down in the water, and then when they turn their head to the side, they're having to exhale and then quickly inhale as well. And that was a big part of why swimmers or people who use swimming as cross training actually have trouble at first. So the thing is, the key there is, with swimming specifically, is just to find a way to regulate your breathing. It should always be a slow inhale and a slow exhale.
Right.
So yeah, okay. So I guess we have some examples actually of ineffective and effective breathing techniques. So I'll share my screen again, and we're just going to play a little video there. It's here. So this is Jen, who has already been featured in our discussion series.
Hi, I'm Jen with Fellow Massages, and today we're going to go over some common inefficient breathing issues that some people have to accentuate the importance of proper breathing in your training and daily life. Stu here is going to help me demonstrate these techniques so you guys can see them a little bit better. The first thing that people tend to do is hunch their shoulders. Either that's because they are stressed or they're cold, but a lot of times the shoulders tend to make their way up towards the ears. So Stu's going to over-exaggerate this a little bit so you guys can all see. And go ahead, Stu, try to take a nice deep breath with your shoulders hunched. Okay, you can see that he's not really getting a good breath in this position. Also, another technique another thing that some people tend to do is that they hunch their shoulders over and round their back, collapsing in on the lungs, whether you're at a computer or hunched over a phone. This is a very common thing to see. Stu, you can see actually is already doing this a little bit, but go ahead, Stu, over-exaggerate a little bit so everyone can see, this position, and then go ahead, try to take another deep breath. Okay, you can hear it's a little bit labored. He's really just not getting the full amount of air that he could be. The last thing that people tend not to do correctly is they don't breathe into their belly. So just go ahead and we'll have Stu sit up here, and Stu, just tighten your abs and take a deep breath, but just try to take it into your chest without allowing your belly to expand. Okay, so you can see he's having a little bit of difficulty with this. Again, this is a very common thing. People breathe into their chest and aren't really getting all of the air and oxygen that they could. So now we're going to demonstrate 2 proper breathing techniques that will help you to breathe a little bit better and increase your performance. The first thing that you can do is really breathe into your diaphragm. Now, this is the muscle that lets you inhale, and when you are breathing properly, you will notice that your belly expands. You may even feel it a little into your side and your back. So we're going to have Stu demonstrate this. I want you to sit up nice and straight, and I want you to take a couple big, deep breaths and fully expand your belly as you do that. Okay, so you can see that as Steve's breathing, his belly's getting nice and big as his diaphragm expands, and then his abs contract to exhale. And he's getting some nice, full, deep breaths here. The other technique that you can do is you can do nasal breathing, which essentially is just breathing through your nose as opposed to your mouth. By breathing through your nose instead of your mouth, you will actually process oxygen a little bit better, as well as filter out any particles or dirt that may be in the air, so that they don't reach your lungs, whereas those that can actually get to your lungs if you're breathing through your mouth. Hopefully, these two techniques will allow you to increase your performance.
It's kind of funny because I just realized that he's wearing my shirt and I haven't seen it in 3 years.
Oh no, sprung.
Okay. I missed that thing.
That is funny. All right. Okay, so we actually have another self-care article here that Emily has written, and there are some demonstrations here as well. So I'll just play this for you quickly as well. So this is just another exercise that you can complete.
Yeah, when you do it laying on your back, I mean, you can do it laying on your back or sitting up. If you lay on your back, you're able to actually feel what like your stomach expanding is supposed to feel like. So.
All right, and then we have this one here, which was the Ryan did such a good job with all these self-care. We've used him a lot, haven't we?
He's been in every video so far.
Yeah. Okay, so here are some exercises that you can do. These are mobility exercises to open up the thoracic cavity. Okay, so this one is basically just, what's involved here is basically just you're taking one arm and you're just opening up that cavity there and then coming back. So obviously he's laying on the ground doing that. And then what else do we have? And then this is the other one that was demonstrated. So basically it's kind of just coming in close and then coming out laterally with that. And then what else did we have? And then the wall angel. So this is like arms against the wall, and then we just slide them up and then come back down. But this was all in our self-care series for this week. Oh look, there's the cyclist you were talking about before. And then we also have this is actually self-care for tension release in the abdominal muscles, and then also for tension release in the diaphragm. So this is yeah.
So sorry. So quick, I'm looking at that picture, and those are two different exercises. So make sure that the first one up top, that's like a dodgeball. That's not an actual massage ball. If you try doing that with a lacrosse ball or a massage ball, you're gonna hurt yourself. So that has much more give to it than he's not using the same thing there.
No, absolutely. So he said the first one, he said he called it a playground style ball, like the red ball you would use to play handball with, smaller than a basketball. And then down below he's using like a softball size ball. So like Alana said, a grapefruit.
Yep.
All right, so does anyone have anything to share or any questions that they would like answered?
One question.
Yes.
Do you include abdominal / diaphragm stretching as part of a pre-workout routine? Going out for a run, you're going to do your hip openers, your legs. Do you also include routinely diaphragm or ribcage stretches to maximize the benefits of running and not being constricted?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, simple stretches as far as like what we talked about, like stretching out the pec minor, for example, are those wall stretches that we talked about.
Right.
Stretching the abdominal area, that's something like an upward facing dog that stretches all those guys out. Stretching the obliques, that's a standing side bend. And again, just facilitating movement in those stretches and not necessarily sitting in them for longer periods of time. But yeah, absolutely.
Got it.
Martin, any breathing techniques that can help like relieve like somebody that has like a side stitch or like during a race or anything like that? Like,
yeah, so that was actually, it's on one of our Olivia, do you have that?
Yeah.
So
sure.
the thing with the side stitch, I think it's called like the mysterious side stitch. So it's not really sure what causes that, but it's pretty much, I guess, like what they're discussing is that it's a spasm of the diaphragm. So one of the techniques that I found that help with that stitch that gets right underneath your rib, like on the side there, what I normally do is I take my fingers and I curl my hands and I lift right underneath my rib cage, and then I blow out like I'm blowing a balloon. So when you do that, you're gonna feel your fingers just kind of push out, and that's pretty much what you're doing is massaging the diaphragm. So it's a cramp of your diaphragm, and what you're doing is it's like that pin and stretch technique that we always talk about. And then there's a lot of different theories as far as like different, like if you eat like I think it's like a fatty food beforehand, like sometimes fats in your diet will affect side stitches, but I think like what they're really finally starting to realize is that it's like anything, it's just a cramp, it's a spasm of the diaphragm muscle that just needs to, like with any other muscle, get worked out. But yeah, that's a really cool technique. I mean, it's like you can't be afraid to take your hand and your fingers and really shove them up behind your ribs and then blow out. And I'm telling you, it definitely helps. It really does.
No, that's good. Thanks.
What do I call it? A poke and blow technique?
Yeah, poke and blow. Yeah, so it's point number 2 there. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Anything else that anyone would like to add or ask or suggest or demonstrate?
I always felt like when I was doing like track races, I always felt like it was effective, like breathing in through my nose and out through my mouth. I don't know if there's any science behind that, but.
I mean, like it's tough not to, especially on the higher, intensity things like we were talking about. But if you just practice doing like slower movements and really just doing nasal breathing only. So like if you take a yoga class, they're really adamant about nasal breathing only, syncing movement with breath. Like that's something that they drill into you. So like that's you're going through all these difficult poses. You're putting your body through all this physical stress, but you're tapping into that parasympathetic nervous response to help, just calmly do it as opposed to like really taxing yourself.
So Ryan, I don't know if you heard Martin earlier, but he was talking about the difference between mouth and nasal breathing.
Yeah, I heard him when he was talking about the swimming and stuff. Yeah.
Well, no, even before that. I guess that was around when you were, but basically nasal breathing is going to like filter the air. So you're just going to get pure air, which is why it, benefits you when your body, is exercising.
Okay.
And then Alana had a fun fact about mouth breathing. I don't remember what it was specifically though. Alana, did you want to share that?
Sure. So it's basically just the fact that we can't, so we can solely breathe through our nose, as in like you keep your mouth shut and you can breathe in and out through your nose. But if you breathe through your mouth, you're still breathing through your nose as well, which is why I say like snorkel gear, the mask for your eyes actually covers your nose as well. Because if it didn't, you would actually, every time you inhaled, you'd be getting salt water inhaled through your nose while you're inhaling air through the, whatever that thing is called.
The snorkel.
Yes, thank you.
And I've definitely been there, had the salt water up the nose.
That's not fun. So, Martin, if I'm hearing you correctly, does that mean, like, say if you're doing distance running, you want to breathe through your nose instead, or it's just cleaner air so it's slightly better for you?
You want to try as much as possible to facilitate nasal breathing. It's something that's very difficult to do, believe me, and especially if you exert yourself more. The more you exert yourself, the more you're gonna want to inhale and exhale through your mouth. But what you're trying to do is engage, the parasympathetic nervous system, especially in long distance stuff. Because if you're in that fight or flight stage for, a 3-hour marathon, it's not going to be good news.
So I'm just curious, and I know we kind of covered about breathing techniques, but so like for myself, as a kid, I was in like sports and dance where I would have short bursts of energy and then kind of a slowdown. So we never really thought about regulating our breathing. And it wasn't until I became an adult and like had to do like 1.5 miles or further. And at first it was absolutely terrible because I had no clue about how to breathe. And I eventually learned to slow down my breathing and regulate it, but I still breathe through my mouth because I don't feel like I'm getting enough oxygen through my nose. So there's already so many things that you're trying to think about while you're running, as far as like posture and keeping your abdominals engaged and all that fun stuff. Do you have any tips for trying to work on switching over to being able to breathe through your nose while you're doing distance running?
Is it something that you think is it more of like a conscious restriction, or like you physically can't breathe through your nose?
No, I can breathe through my nose. I think I feel like I'm not getting enough air.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I think it's more of a mental thing. Sometimes when I'm running, I don't feel like I'm getting enough air through my mouth, period, because I'm just like, this is hard work.
Especially when it's a day like today.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like, have you tried like Ryan's video, like noticing what diaphragmatic breathing like feels like? Are you able to get like a full belly breath? Because if you feel in restriction there, one of those secondary muscles could be what's stopping you. Even like if there's ways to massage the diaphragm, side-lying position, you can really get in there. So that might be something to look into as well.
Yeah, I do notice like when I'm resting or not exerting myself, I definitely easily take diaphragmatic breaths. That's not it. It's just when I get into that pushing the exertion level up,
right,
that I switch over apparently.
Yeah.
All right. Have you guys ever seen anyone play a didgeridoo?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you play one?
Absolutely not.
No.
No.
That is, circular breathing is a skill.
Yeah, it is quite something. So circular breathing, so they're inhaling through the nose while they're exhaling through the mouth. So it's pretty special. But all right. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, this is going to be our last webinar of the series for the time being. Thank you all very much for your support throughout these 12 weeks. We really appreciate you being here with us every week. All of our prior discussions are available online on our website. And for now, our office is still on track to open from June 21st. So we hope to see you in real life in our office very soon. All appointments are available to be booked online. And again, our virtual consultations are still available with all of our therapists before our office opens, and we're actually going to keep that service active, you know, even once our offices open as well. And then we have our online course series and our downloadable workshops. They're all still available as well for self-care and follow at home. Yeah, was there anything else that I forgot, Martin?
No, I think we're good.
I think, yeah, all right, good.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Look forward to having you open again.
Oh, thanks, Ryan.